at this beautiful scene. We are looking at the eastern side of the Kidron stream, down Mount of Olives. Over the course of many generations, thousands of tombs, caves, and tombstones were added here. One of the most famous caves is the one known as the Free House, and I'm using a direct translation from Hebrew as written in the book of 2 Kings chapter 15. According to tradition, Uzziah, the 10th king of Judah, sat in this place until he died. After he contracted leprosy and was forbidden to reside in Jerusalem, and here he was free from the kingdom. However, an inscription discovered on the tomb in 1864 indicates that this is a tomb of a respected priestly family, Benei Hezir, that is, in translation, sons of Hezir. The tombs are from the Second Temple period. Only a few families who were rich and respected could carve tombs for themselves in the prestigious area here in front of the Temple Mount. Who were Benei Hezir? Hezir was the father of the 17th priestly shift. Let's use the next 2 minutes to discuss priestly shifts. These are groups of priests who served in the temple on weekly shifts. Each group was called a shift, sometimes referred to as a division or order. All members of a shift were members of the same family and lived in the same location. The division of the priests into 24 war groups is mentioned for the first time in the book of 1 Chronicles chapter 24. At the basis of the division stood the two family branches from the sons of Aaron, Moses' brother. These are Elazar and Itamar. Only from these two sons, since Aaron's two eldest sons, Nadav and Avihu, died and left no sons. The division itself was preceded by a census. The results of the census was that there were many more men originated from Elazar, and therefore 16 divisions were created from Elazar families, and only 8 were allocated to Itamar families. The order of the shifts was determined by the casting of lots, and the results were recorded in front of King David, his ministers, and many other dignitaries. The presence of the leader was intended to perpetuate for generations the list of the priestly and the order they served. The list was indeed immortalized and was preserved in Second Temple sources, for example, in the literature of the sages, in the Dead Sea Scrolls, and in other places. As a starting point, each shift served twice a year, 1 week each time. However, since in practice 2 weeks on average remained from the time of the second service of the 24th shift was completed until end of the year, at the end of the first year, as an example, the first and second shift served again for the third time. And in the second year, the service of shifts 3 and 4 was brought forward, and so on. In this way, the times of the shifts changed every year, and thus, within a period of several years, each shift was serving during all months of the year and during all the Jewish holidays, thus expressing the principle of equality among the shifts. I will not expand on their duties, just mention a few examples such as offering the daily and holiday temple sacrifice and administrating the priestly blessing to the people, lighting the menorah, and all the other daily works and many other diverse roles. Benei Hezir tomb proves that this family of priests was wealthy and had special social status since the Hasmonean period until the end of the Second Temple period in 70 CE. Just to prove this point, I will mention that for 100 years, until the establishment of Absalom tomb, Benei Hezir tomb was the only tomb in front of the Temple Mount. No artifacts from the Second Temple period were discovered in the tomb of Benei Hezir because the tomb was looted in ancient times. The facade of the tomb has a Doric style that was common in the Hellenistic period. The tomb is characterized by simplicity, a uniform style without Roman influence, and this perhaps indicates its antiquity. In front of the tomb stands two baseless columns. In stone-built structures, such columns are used to support the ceiling, but here the role is purely aesthetic. Above the column heading is the architraves. This is the beam above the column heading on which an inscription is engraved in ancient Hebrew. I will refer shortly to the inscription. According to the archaeologists, the tomb and the soul, which I will refer to in a minute, were carved at the end of the 2nd century BCE. Regarding the inscription on the beam, it was probably written several generations after the tomb was carved. So it is from the beginning of the 1st century BCE, that is from 2,100 years ago. The tomb continued to be used by Benei Hezir family even in the last generation before destruction of the Second Temple. Above the columns in the front, as I mentioned, there is a beam with an inscription in ancient Hebrew, and it reads as follows. The inscription indicates that 6 sons of Yosef, son of Oved, and 2 sons of one of the brothers, Haniah, were buried here. All priests belonged to the family of Hezir. Looking at the inside of the tomb, a wide corridor is connected to a hall from which 3 rooms have been carved. From the northeast side corner of the eastern room, another room was carved with 3 vaulted tombs, where it is likely that the patriarchs of the chiefs were buried in a sarcophagus, unlike the burial in the other caves. The ancient entrance to the corridor was through a shaft with 11 steps. The stairs end at the height of 2 meters above the floor of the corridor, which is very strange. What the archaeologists estimate is that 20 steps were actually curved and not the 11 that you see when the quarrying was done from top down. When they reached the desired depth, they expanded the quarry and created the corridor, the tomb and the facade, and then removed the 9 lower steps that impacted the architectural beauty of the facade and vestibule. Adjacent to the front of Benei Hezir tomb, there is another front to the left. This is designed in a shape of a tower of 2 vertical strips. Between the strips, there is another strip that is curved and penetrates about 30 centimeters into the rock. At the bottom of it, there is a dummy opening. The structure of the tower is probably the soul, or nefesh in Hebrew, that is its tombstone. We will not expand further today on the meaning of the soul in the Hebrew Bible and in the halacha in the context of burial. Those of you who have visited Petra, I have no doubt that you have seen many buildings of this type. The assumption that the source of inscription for the soul next to the tomb of Benei Hezir originated from Nabatean architecture is certainly reasonable. And it fits nicely with the inscription on the front, and I quote the beginning, which says, "This is a tomb and the soul of," end of quote. Since soul in the meaning of tombstone appear often in Nabatean inscriptions. In Petra, the first tombs with tower-shaped facade are from the beginning of the 1st century BC. Please note that the Jews during the Hasmonean period, the Nabateans and the Iturians, were the three nations that established national states with the weakening of the Seleucid kingdom. That is for this session. And to conclude, as usual, I have a question for you. What is the name of the last priesthood shift? The answer will appear in 5 seconds.